Show tunes with lyrics where skill never wobbles, no wrong emphasis on errant syllables, lively discussions of songs, queens and kings. This is the podcast my favourite sings. Rather than dissing what Broadway's rewarding, I'll give a listen to Goldsmith and Gordon. They'll dissect musicals, arrows and slings. Here on the podcast my favourite sings. When the show bites, when the rhymes suck, when the craft's regressed, I go to the podcast my favourite sings, where David and Paul know best. Okay, welcome. This is My Favorite Sings with David Goldsmith and Paul Gordon. So you're going to notice a few things this week. First of all, I want to explain the pink, for those of you who are not watching this on Spotify or YouTube. I'm wearing pink headphones, and I'm wearing them because it's Pride. It's June, and I wanted to show my solidarity. Actually, no, they belong to my wife, Brianna. So what had happened was, I needed new AirPods. Here, let me show you. These are the new ones, and they're very old because I like the rope behind my neck, because those earphones that everyone wears now. My ears are huge. You can't see here. I'm going to show you. Well, they don't look huge on camera right there, but that's only because I have this enormous melon for a head. So I look proportional, but the actual physical dimensions of my ears are, I'm like Dumbo, but I have medicine ball head, so I have Dumbo ears. So those little earbuds fall out of my ears on the subway or wherever. And if I, let's say I stumble, they're gone. I have to wear these headphones because I got all of my headphone stuff replaced. And I was gifted these gorgeous, you can't see, but they're gorgeous. And they're baby boy blue Beats headphones. And I love them, but I can't use them when I'm recording for a podcast or for just like editing on my computer, because there's a sound lag because they're wireless. Have I explained why I'm wearing pink headphones? Yes, it's Pride. Today, we have a special guest co-host. Paul Gordon is on the West Coast today. He's on vacation, folks. We all go on vacation, and Paul, have a great time this week. Eat it. Well, they're all gone now, all the places we used to eat. So I lived there for 28 years. It's funny, I didn't meet Paul until we were actually both in New York, across the street from each other on 50th Street and 8th Avenue. But I digress. Paul's in LA. He's on vacation. He's eating tender greens and I don't know what the hell's out there anymore, where the places to go are. I hear Chin Chin is closing. Which brings me to my next guest. John Kavanaugh is one of my, I have several writing partners as a lyricist. A lot of lyricists try to, glom onto one guy, and that's it for the rest of their lives. And if you're Stephen Flaherty, you found Lynn Ahrens in 1989 or whenever it was, and that was it. If you were Justin Paul and Benj Pasek, you found each other, you had a moment, you're a team. But for a lot of us who aren't our own Jason Robert Browns or Lin-Manuel Mirandas or Meredith Wilsons or Frank Lessers, in other words, guys who write it all, we find partners. And I've been very fortunate in my time on Earth to have worked with some of the best. And one of them is my co-host today in Paul's absence. John Kavanaugh is an Emmy Award-winning composer. He's just gotten his 9th Emmy nomination this season. 9! A staggering body of work. in both animation and theater. Emmy and Annie Award awarded for his music on Disney's Sofia the First, Elena of Avalor. Those of you who have children or had children in the last 15 years, you've heard John's work. Probably a lot. Um, he's also received multiple Children's and Family Emmy nominations for Disney Junior's Alice's Wonderland Bakery, where he co-wrote The Hat Makes the Hatter, Let Your Wish Carry You Away. Oh, look, he composed the chart-topping song My Once Upon a Time for Descendants 3, written with David Goldsmith. I'm just reading this off the internet, folks, which hit #1 on release and earned a Billboard Music Award nomination. I don't think that's right. It's generally right. John also comes with rich experience developing theme park shows, Tokyo Disney Sea, Sesame Street Live, Flintstones the Musical. Shout out to Barbara Epstein. Hi, Barbara. We love you. And across Disney streaming strategy, working with kids and families for over 15 years. He's also co-creator of Five Women at an Airport, which I'm sure we'll talk about when we talk, which you've probably heard me talk about on this podcast, and if not, look it up. Oh, God, that sounded terrible. Well, I'm not editing. This is it. But let me just speak from the heart. John is honestly one of the most brilliant musicians I've ever worked with, the most brilliant composers I've ever known. I love his music. I love his style. I love working with him. We speak the same language. And a lot of that is going to be to the benefit of you, our listener, because I know you're interested in the process of how it all goes down. On with the show. My favorite sings with David Goldsmith and John Kavanaugh. Enjoy. John Kavanaugh, welcome to My Favorite Sings.
No Grammys. No Grammys.
Okay. Well, I like to embellish a little bit, but you're right. I don't need to embellish. There's so many. There's so
Never let
much.
the truth get in the way of a good story.
Well, that's right. So you're today's guest co-host of the podcast.
Co-host. Is,
Yes.
is there other guests that I get to co-host? Or
Well,
just
one day we'll have you back as just a guest, like with me and
okay.
Paul.
Okay.
But today you're actually co-hosting. Paul, ironically, is in your city today.
Oh my gosh.
He's in LA.
Wow. What's he
He's seeing,
doing?
he's seeing, he's just taking a trip, seeing old friends. I really shouldn't put Paul Gordon's business out on the street, but he hasn't been in LA in a long time, and this was the week, and that just
Awesome.
means that he's now, unavailable because is he eating, tender greens? I don't
Chin
really know.
Chin.
See-
Chin Chin.
Wait, I hear Chin Chin is closing.
Oh, really?
I can't believe I'm the one breaking this to you, but I was
Wow.
just told, like yesterday, the day before, I can't remember who told me now, but someone said Chin Chin is actually closing.
Well, it hasn't been as good as it used to be when you lived here for quite some time. It's changed hands so many times. So
So when I lived there and you and I were writing our earliest shows together, we would be at Chin Chin at least. How many times a week were we at Chin Chin?
I don't know, but one of my roommates at the time was so sick of smelling Chinese chicken salad. I won't mention any names, Michelle.
Sorry, Michelle. I really apologize. Okay, I think I will have explained why I'm wearing these pink headphones. So don't let them throw you off. I mean, I'm actually, you know
Okay.
what? They're in honor of Pride Month.
Okay, there you go.
Okay, until I can
Okay.
replace them. These are my wife's headphones, and yeah. Um,
Oh,
so Johnny, I do want to start by saying that as it happens, we are celebrating. And I don't know how much detail we can get into because you are much more into the whole NDA of how these things work. But I can say, because I've already posted this on social media, that this week, basically a week ago, but this week essentially, we sold a song to Disney together, didn't we?
we did, and they were recording it this week.
Oh, that's
The
right. They
talent,
invited me to the
the
recording
talent.
session. It's tomorrow,
Right.
isn't it?
Yes, I want no the 14th. I
That's
don't know when.
tomorrow.
Oh,
We're recording
um,
this on the 13th.
unbelievable.
Are you
So
going?
no, I'm out of town.
Oh, how sad.
Yeah, it's fun.
Now, what can you
Uh,
tell? What can you tell our listener, because I think we have one. What can you tell our listener about what we sold, and then let's talk a little bit about the process.
Well, you and I have written for Disney Channel before. We've gotten one before this one, and we've lost several.
Many.
Um, I think the kind of music you and I write isn't always what the channel is looking for, because we do write more musical theater than a lot of the kids that are writing for those shows. But we got asked to write a song a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago maybe. And when for your audience, if the case they don't know, we don't get the gig. We're one of either two songwriting teams or more. And so you're basically spending time hiring singers, guitar players, or whatever on your own dime and hope that it pays off in the end. And it's a brand new show, live action on the Disney Channel. Uh, One of my oldest friends is actually involved as a showrunner, producer type. And uh, we sent the song in and we got it.
So
And
two questions come up, I think, for the audience. One is how much do you think the we had a good friend on the inside who was a showrunner helped? That's the first question. The second question is, um, what is usually one other team or how many other teams are we generally up against in this situation, and how is this one different?
well, I could only speak to the times that I've put songs in of my own that maybe you weren't involved with, which if it was for a bigger project, for example, Sofia the First, writing to be a part of a franchise like that long term, I was the songwriter. I was up against many other people. Some
I
other
mean, when you
some
say many, like 10 teams, 20 teams.
Yeah, it could have been. It could have been.
Yeah,
Many of our great friends.
yeah.
Uh, but I think the way the channel is doing it these days is two teams, two songs. So we had a 50-50 chance. And to your other question, I think we could feel good about getting this on our own because there's too much at stake for, a
Well,
showrunner
that's
with,
right.
yeah. There's too much at stake for anybody to do this as to be nice.
That's right.
So we're certainly worthy, whether, you know, the other
Now,
song I'm
now
sure
also
is
just as a
great.
point of practicality, all of these submissions are blind.
Yes,
They
they
are
are.
they are submitted
Yes,
without names. So,
yes.
your friend didn't know when we
No,
submitted which song was ours and which
no,
song was that of the other team.
no. The other team.
Who we really don't know who that was.
I was doing some quote from one of those grammar rock. I want to be on the other team or something. That's
I no, and I've done songs with you for Disney. I've done songs with Bo Black, who did actually. Bo came
right.
on the last podcast. Bree and I did. My wife and I did the swirl with Bree and Dave. So he's already had his moment in the podcast sun with me. But I know with Bo, every song I've worked with Bo at Disney, he has essentially subcontracted me on.
Right, right,
They just gave him the budget and said, "You hire who you want,"
right,
and
right.
he just turned to me.
He produced the track. Right,
But and Bo and I have also done the cattle call, as you and I have done many times. And I'm calling
right,
the cattle call when we go up against multiple
right,
teams, and
right.
the showrunner, the executives, the network all have to sign off on the one song, and it really is you have no control over it. Whether it's the kind of even if you think that they don't want the song that sounds like the songs we write, there are so many other factors going in that we have no control over.
Oh, totally. I think sometimes this is so true in theater. When I've been playing for auditions for a Disney project, a live Disney project, and I'm involved in the choice of who gets cast, and I know these are the three best female singers, let's say. Those are un without a doubt the three best female singers who auditioned. And the resumes will get on the table and they'll go, blonde, brunette, redhead.
Heartbreaking.
I mean, it's just so my point is for us, it's not always about which is the better song. Someone might just say, well, I kind of think we have too many ballads, or I don't like that title, or
Yeah.
so I loved there's no reason anyone in the world would know this but I wrote many, many songs for theme parks before I got my kind of break with Sophia. And most of those songs, not all of them, but most of those songs I was hired to write. And the deal was kind of like Bo was hired to write
Right.
that Christmas series that he did with you. The deal was obviously if they didn't like the song, I would rewrite it. And then if they didn't like anything about it, I would rewrite. I wasn't automatically like I just threw it in and they took it and life was great.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
so I think that's at this point in my life what I would definitely prefer, not having to spend a lot of time with you on something we might not get. But I'm very proud that we got the song in, and I'm very grateful to everyone over there. And yeah, I'll just talk about you for a second because your
Uh-oh.
audience your audience doesn't know how I feel about you.
Oh, okay. All right,
No,
listener,
we
here it
got
comes.
we got this assignment, and you and I spoke one night, the night I was called, and we chatted the next morning, and by lunchtime, the bulk of the song was was more than conceived. It was kind of, I was tweaking for the next week and a half, and you were too, but you're so quick, you're so adept at technique, and what you give me is always so well lined up and the verses match the other verses and not everyone knows how to do that. Not everyone is as proficient and talented as you. And so it's a lot of work to maybe produce the track. It's not a lot of work for us to write it,
No,
you
that's
know.
true. And thank you so much for the compliments. And obviously, I also know when I'm working on something I'm going to hand over to you that you're going to be able to use your right brain and apply your your genius to it and also your heart to it. And so I know when I hand something to you, it has to be at a certain level. I mean, because you're so adept at setting whatever I put out, you'll make it work. So if you're going to make it work, I want to make sure that what you end up making work is worthy of being worked on. And
Oh, you're so
so no, and that's I mean it's really the joy of writing songs with you is I know we understand each other's language.
yeah.
We speak each other's artistic language, creative language,
Yeah.
spiritual language, and technical language.
We both are educated in the same world, from the same world, with the same knowledge of musical theater, songwriting in general. I don't think a lot of people or a lot of I think a lot of people write in the pop song style, the verse, chorus, bridge, verse, chorus, or chorus, 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 chorus. But I don't think a lot of people are educated in all the other types of song formats, structures. But you and I, we could say, do you want this to be A, B, A, B?
Right,
We just know, is it going
right.
to be A, B, A, or do you want to do A, B prime, or whatever we're talking about. But we have the knowledge and we speak the same language, as you said. So
Of
it's
structure. And I think having the knowledge of structure means that then we can look at it and go, are we too structured? Is it too formal? Where can we break things up? Where can we make, and you're so good at that. And I love that part of the process with you where we start with something that's very solid and then we're able to say, okay, so now how can we edge
right.
outward from it? And because you're such a very skilled musician,
Well,
you're able to do that in a way that makes sense.
I want to clarify. There, all of our pals who are really close to, like Marcy and Zena, and all these, a ton of people, they know the same thing we do. We speak the
Absolutely.
same
Oh no,
language as them.
absolutely.
I was just saying, like a lot of the youth, the new writers, aren't familiar with those songs, the Gershwin songs, Cole Porter
Right.
songs, then that had those weird structures. So
Yeah.
because their world, it's nine times out of ten, you hear a song on the radio these days, and it's
Right.
verse, chorus, bridge, chorus.
Right. And it actually
So
limits, I think, the imagination to not know what that history is and
yeah,
where that stuff comes from. Because actually, it's not new, you know. I mean,
yeah,
I mean, the innovation of of those masters also meant there were songs in that era that were boring, and there were songs in that era and
Yeah,
by composers of that era who fell by the wayside. The ones that rose to the top, the Frank Lessers, the Bach and Harnichts, the Kander and Ebbs,
yeah,
they understood how to keep it fresh, and their stuff stays fresh.
yeah.
I and I want to talk about I want to get into the Descendants, um, because I don't know if you have this experience, but I have a lot of friends who have kids now, which is
Uh-huh.
actually a wonderful part of what we do. Because as we get older, our friends become parents and they play for them, or their kids discover this stuff on Disney. I know you have this experience with Sophia and Elena. And I've had the experience with the Descendants of friends of mine or people I meet who have kids or people I've never met before who have kids who find out that that I wrote the song with you for Descendants 3 that Dove Cameron sings at the end of the trilogy, and their kids are just you know for them I'm a celebrity because of that. Um, and where was I going with that, Johnny? I got lost in the memory of that. But I wanted to just talk about the process of you and me as the type of writers we are, as coming from musical theater, and what an uphill climb that was at that
Yeah.
time. 7 years
And,
ago now, when we were actually writing that song, and every other song in that franchise had a different feel to it.
right,
And they kept coming back to us and they kept rejecting us. I mean, I think we wrote three at least, but we wrote four
right.
songs for that franchise before they bought My Once Upon a Time. And when they finally came back to us for My Once Upon a Time, it was we think this moment in this show, which was what we want the Mao characters let it go moment to be.
Right,
We think you
right,
guys can write. Well, of course, it always ends up when we get to the feature level at Disney. It's always the Kristen Anderson Lopez's and the Bobby Lopez's and the Ashman and Menkens and the
right,
Menken and Stephen Schwartz. I mean, they always go back to the Broadway roots that Ashman
right,
and Menken found in Little Mermaid and
right.
Beauty and the Beast. I mean, on the Disney Channel and Disney Junior, there's a resistance to it. But when you get to the final level of of the Disney
Yeah.
pantheon, it always goes back to the Broadway musical template, which is what we write. And so
Uh,
they finally came back to us on Descendants and said, we need to let it go. And that was for us, the process of writing My Once Upon a Time was very similar to the one you're describing for the song we sold last week, which was, you know, we had the conversation, we came up with what the hook was. And then I'm sure you went away with some musical ideas about how it would feel. And I
yeah.
believe you
I
remind me, but
don't.
I believe that I wrote most of it and
Yeah, I
came back
think
to you with it.
we had talked about a lot of, if anyone's listening, they Disney always gives, and most companies give you musical ideas, refs. We like the strengths from this song. We like the drama of this song. We like kind of the tempo and the mood of this song. So we had a couple of refs, and you and I listened to them, and we picked one. I'm not going to mention any names.
Oh, I don't
Michelle.
even remember that. Oh, wow. Okay. You can't mention the name? Okay. No, don't mention the name.
uh, yeah. So I was going to say something about the song we just sold. Um, we the demos I write. I think I'm sure you agree. There's a big difference between a great song and a great track. And
Yeah.
a record is not a song, and a song is not a record.
Yeah.
Um, so, I am not the most talented at doing demos in general, but especially in this genre that they were hoping for. But they knew that going in, they knew that what they were going to get from me as far as the final demo that we're going to send in. I think this one was pretty good, actually.
Yes, you undersell yourself, but yes.
But they knew, but they knew going in that they were going to hire an outside producer. And in this case, they hired one of the best. They hired Matthew Tischler, who's also helping me on the new Sofia the First songs that I'm writing to fit into this kind of style. So, the song is different. In this case, Matt did a great job. It sounds just like the demo we wrote,
Yeah.
except more modern and hip, and there's a groove, a nice groove, and just great sounds, and it's very full and rich and dynamic, and but we both heard it, as you remember, and loved it, and so
Yeah,
yeah,
no, I mean, I think you undersell yourself. You worked very hard on that track, but I do think that the reality that I think our listener would be interested in is what you've said about the difference between a track and a song, because at least for us, the song part went very quickly, and the
yeah,
track part was much more about, like getting guitar samples and
yeah, yeah.
and making it sound like, something, and that's a whole separate skill set which I think is in many instances has sort of overtaken the actual songwriting part
Yeah, yeah.
and
They
become
think I think networks execs, and I was on a panel a couple of years ago, and this was kind of the gist of it. Um, they want to be handed a complete
correct.
product. They don't have time to go, this is a great song, let's get it orchestrated. They don't have the desire to, okay, great, maybe your song's better, but your song is done. You know, they're not interested. So I was asked on that panel if I had any advice for all the songwriters and producers in the room, and I said, yeah, be like this guy. And this guy was someone like Matt Tischler, who
Right.
can not only write a great song, but he could deliver it fully produced. And so that was my advice. I grew up when you could run down to the bakery and do a piano demo, and
Well, no,
piano.
and when I mean, I don't really know how much I would have said in the introduction, but you and I wrote our first songs together almost 40 years ago now.
I
Um,
was 6 and you were 4.
exactly. We were very precocious elementary schoolers. And in those days, and it's interesting because I don't want to you can't undersell your level of training and skill 40 years ago as a musician, your ability to arrange songs, write charts out by hand, piano,
Painful.
vocal, instrumental charts, all by hand. And we would record, and we did sell some songs back in those days with just you and me at the piano with a cassette tape recording. And it was incumbent upon whoever was listening to it to have the imagination to
Yeah,
hear what it would
yeah,
sound like with an
yeah.
orchestra, which was actually in those days probably not going to be synthesized on any sort of,
No, no,
keyboard
no, no.
because the sounds at that time were so like it just sounded like it sounded like a computer. It sounded like a Casio computer. So
I
that's
even
changed.
oh, totally. In fact, I've heard and I haven't experienced as well. I guess I had a little bit on Sophia, but like some execs don't even want to hear live instruments. Like,
Oh well.
they want it to sound, you
So
know, so
we know
new
where
and
we are
so
now, but I think the point I want to make is that your training, the depth of your knowledge as an arranger, as an orchestrator, as a musician, as a composer, has has I believe there is the direct link between all of that training and all of that experience and all of those plaques behind you on that wall.
yeah.
And I want to emphasize that while we're going to tell young people, yes, you need to be able to get behind whatever the fuck it is now, Da Vinci or I don't, whatever it is, and master that. Don't forget that the basics of the building blocks of songwriting, what they
Yes.
are,
I,
and
I
and
was I was talking to a young kid who wanted my advice yesterday, via Zoom, and I basically said that what you just said. I said you need to. I hadn't heard a note he had written yet. I have, and he's very talented. But I was mentioning that in my life, in my career, one of the best things that happened to me as far as cementing my knowledge of the process was when I got into BMI music theater workshop. And Skip Kennan, this incredible teacher, he was an incredible writer and musician, but he was a great teacher. And I knew these things. I knew what an AB song was again,
mhm.
but not everyone in the class did. And so he just it was such a great experience in songwriting, you know, to your point. It was about the song, not about the orchestration or the demo, or so we would perform live in the room. You and I did the ASCAP theater workshop, I think a couple of nights, but we didn't really
Yeah.
stick with it for some reason. I don't know why.
I did the
Uh,
Disney workshop thing that Stephen Schwartz does
yeah. So
in
anyway, yeah.
Burbank.
So the biggest of it's a process of being in college and doing shows and then writing your reviews and then writing songs for Disneyland or Disney World. It's all a process that that
But I will tell
you
you that the
gain
people
from.
working at the highest levels of of songwriting at Disney, like you, and on Broadway, like the Tom Kitts of the world, those are people that you go into a room with, and they actually really know their shit. Like they've actually trained, and they're arrangers, they're composers, but they're musicians. They're trained musicians.
Right.
They can actually, if they're the ones charged with the job, they can go back and produce for you a full
Right.
orchestral score if necessary, and everything that goes into it. So, I think there's a lot of, and it was true when we were kids as well. And I suffered from this, the notion that training would get in the way of inspiration, that training would somehow diminish my natural, right brained, new inspiration.
Well,
And they're not in conflict with each other. They are in
what did
confluence
you
with each
what
other.
how did you learn your lyric? How did you become so proficient at lyric writing? What was the
Well, of course, we talked about a little bit this on the pod before, but you don't go to lyric writing school for theater. Like it's not a thing. I'm teaching a course in lyric writing for the theater online at theaterwriting.com. And you can go there, and I will and I actually am teaching classes for middle school,
you're
high
gonna put that at the
school.
bottom of it, like
I can
of
do
the
that. I actually, you know what, I've developed the skills to do that now. But so that's a thing. But in my case, it's as ever. You go to the masters of your craft, and
right,
you just analyze and
right,
study, and any words that they've written about it. In my case, and in our case as theater songwriters, we have a wealth of literature that we can turn to. Sondheim and Company, for me,
right,
was the formative. There's a chapter that he had that there was in that Craig Zadan book from 1975 about lyric writing, and that was essentially my formal training as a theater lyricist.
right.
But as you said, you go in having a sense of what these things are, if you have a sense of what these things are, and a lot of what you feel, it gets confirmed in words that you study, and then you it puts it into action for you. Like, oh, that thing that I sensed, I now have the words for, and I
Yes,
can now apply it.
exactly. That's what I was talking about, BMI. I knew what I was doing, but
Yeah, but it was
he just laid it all
instinctive.
out.
It was
Yeah.
instinctive from what you had steeped yourself in because you loved it. you
Yes.
know,
Yeah.
and
I
it was the same for me. My mother brought me up, and like she ran the Jewish Community Center teen musical, and those kids wrote parody lyrics for these Broadway show tunes. So I fell in love with Broadway show tunes. I fell in love with parody lyric writing, and that was sort of my gateway into it. So by the time I was in my teens, and I was studying, okay, how am I going to actually do this? I had talent for it. But then reading Sondheim and studying Sondheim, and then obviously getting your hands on every book and every musical and
right.
as much as you can, you develop, and then you start putting it on, then you start writing it, and then you start putting it in front of people, and then you start getting the feedback, and then you start to understand what works and what doesn't and how.
Right. Right.
Obviously, you learn by doing, but also I then personally, I went to a performing arts high school where I learned college level music theory by the time I was 18. So that when I went to
Right.
college, I was in I went to conservatory as a music theater
Right.
major, and I was studying. I already, my cantus firmi was already pretty Kantian firmi. Um, so
Did you remember? Did they know that you went to CCM? Is that
I
your
don't know that
audience?
I've mentioned it on the pod. Yeah, I'm a proud alum of the College of Conservatory Music at the University of Cincinnati.
And coincidentally, when I graduated college, I was going to go to grad school and I got into CCM as a grad student.
I think I remember that.
And I decided I got a job at the same time, sort of with Disney World. And I just decided maybe I'd take a break and then I never went back. So I traveled to CCM and auditioned and they tested me and everything, and so I would have met all of you fabulous CCM grads
Well, we met
while
in
I was,
LA. We met as we're meant to. We did all of those Jackie and Jack shows. We did We're Actors, Please Don't Leave at the Rose Tattoo in 1987
it's
with
a
Michelle
hit.
Polk and Bob Walton and Laurie Walton and Stacey Scott. So we paid our
Yeah,
dues there. I want to go
that was,
back to if there's anything because I like to think of this podcast as something that is, for theater nerds and musical theater nerds and also students. Is there anything in the process other than the lesson we took away writ large from the Descendants, which for me was just be who you are, because eventually you will be found, as the song from Dear Evan Hansen goes, you will be found. We just kept being who we were, and they just kept saying no. But we were very good at who we were
yeah,
until they
if they
said, "We
didn't,
need what you do."
I think they wouldn't have kept coming back and offering us another shot. And I think this moment was they knew they wanted more musical theater, and at least they thought they did. They ended up editing it maybe not to our advantage or the song's advantage, but I definitely think that's right. You have to have your voice, and this it's cliche, write what you know, or if you don't know it, learn it and write what you know. You can't just write about the French Revolution if you don't know anything about the French Revolution.
I
But
I think I just don't want any listener to think that it's about you're bad if you're not chosen. That is
yeah,
not necessarily the
yeah,
case.
no,
Get
no,
very good at what you do.
yeah, yeah, and you have a voice, and yeah, I think Dave, this is true. It was very discouraging back then in LA as the kind of music that you and I wanted to write, the kind of musical theater type stuff that we were writing, because LA didn't care. LA didn't. Nobody in that. We don't. What are you doing that for? Write a score. Write a underscore. Be a score composer,
Right.
and which of course is not my wheelhouse. Um, uh, but then I went to New York and did the BMI workshop, and suddenly I was validated that the kind of songs I wanted to write, the kind of voice that I write with, was so appreciated. And suddenly I had confidence that I didn't have before I left LA. And then I came back 2 years later. We came back, and I was a different person because I was, like you say, the hell with it. This is what I write.
And
This
you were
is,
validated. I mean,
yeah.
Sophia the
So,
First came along, and that. I mean, I don't want to speak for you, but I'm assuming that changed your life, and
oh, totally.
that was you saying, "This is what I do. I've become very, very good at this job. If you want this job filled, I am the person to fill it." And that was you, and you have never looked back.
I think I was very lucky because another friend of mine was uh, running the music department at Disney Television Animation, and Jay Stutler, who's incredible. And
Love
I
Jay.
think I think the brief was for the music. I'm paraphrasing, but musical theater, but with all the Disney legacy, musical legacy behind you. And definitely in the first 4 or 5 songs, we wrote a few pop songs. A few are like an R&B song called "Bigger Is Better," which I always thought was going to be a gay anthem, and it never took.
Sorry about that. Can't have it all.
But yeah,
Pay for
so
pride.
I think that's what he thought. I don't know. I was a good fit for that,
But
and
that really gave me chills, that story, because what that means is that in 2000 and what was it, 2015? When did you start?
no, like 12, maybe 11 or
Okay, so
12.
like in 2011, 2012, 2011 or 2012, if you, with that brief for the job that changed your life, if you had come to that brief and had never immersed yourself in the Sherman Brothers,
Right.
in Ashman and Menken,
Right.
in the stuff that preceded the Sherman Brothers, and really analyzed, well, what were they doing there?
Right.
You would not have gotten that life-changing job.
And just for the record, I didn't get it automatically. I was up against other people, and they got somebody, a talented team got one of my favorite songs in the pilot. And I got another one, and then it just ended up that I ended up getting the full-time gig, but I won't go into that. But
I
yeah,
mean,
it
and there's
wasn't,
probably an interesting story there as to why, but I'm going to just say you won't get into the details, and that's okay. But I know that it had something to do with the wealth and the depth and the breadth of experience that you brought to the table. Clearly,
well, I hope so.
no,
So
obviously. I mean, and 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 so I think it's very important, because we're a bunch of, we're a couple of grandpas, but it's really important that, well, you're not a technical grandpa. You're technically the godfather of my daughter.
I'm a gungle.
You're a gunkle, and you are a gunkle. Um, so, um, so I find that to be life affirming or career affirming. That was part of the brief of that
Yeah.
story. I think it's
I mean, I that was his brief, I think. I didn't know,
yeah, of
I just,
course.
yeah.
But you would have.
Um,
But had you been had you been not studying where you came from all along,
right, right.
you would not have you would not have had the tools you needed to take on that assignment that
It
changed
was
your
a,
life.
yeah, it was Craig Gerber who created it, and the network at that time was, wanted what I had to sell, and I know Jay was a huge help. Um, yeah, it was a wonderful experience. And Elena was, because I kept working with the same group, and yeah. So yeah, that was a very interesting, fun, joyful.
Did you want to go somewhere? I felt like you wanted to go somewhere.
No, no, I was gonna start mentioning names, and I
Oh,
decided
okay.
I don't want to leave anybody out.
I mean, look, I do think that there is a deep dive into, when we talk about, and I haven't pulled up the lyrics, when we talk about My Once Upon a Time and, you know, how how we arrived at that. And I think there was, I mean, I'm going to just recount a couple of interesting stories that come to mind. At least I think are interesting for the, our listener who is interested in how these things work. The original title that we came up with was not My Once Upon a Time. It was One Once Upon a Time,
Yeah, which is very clever.
which is very clever. And the note came back from Kenny Ortega. It's a thinker, he said. And then he eventually just said, "Can you just call it My Once Upon a Time?" And the truth of the matter was is that we'd considered calling it My Once Upon a
Yeah,
Time,
yeah,
but we just thought, is that going to be interesting enough, good enough, different enough?
right.
Um, and it turned out it was just correct. And I love
Yeah,
that that came from the director, and I love that the fact that we didn't hit it for the director right away, or for the company right away, didn't mean that they rejected it outright.
right, right,
They saw in the rest of the song and the music and the rest of the lyric that there was something of value there that was not disposable. How can we, how can we,
right.
if not fix it, how can we adjust it so that it's more we want? And of course, part of the part of what, experience and training gives you is the ability to like turn around and go, first of all, if you have experience, you're not going to be as tightly held to what you've created. You're going to be a lot more
Right,
flexible.
right.
And then the second thing is, I mean, we made changes in those lyrics and in that music as we went along, not just the title.
No, I also would point out to your listener that they did an edit in the actual final cut, and which, they did a few things that they wanted to do, and that's, we have no power, it's their song. But if I'm particularly fond of the whole song as we wrote it, as written on the soundtrack. And I
At least
love,
it's there. Yeah.
yes, and I love Stephen Vincent. He always does that.
Yeah.
There is a piece of material he believes in, and he put it on the soundtrack the way it was conceived.
I want
Um,
to do that. I actually do want to give a shout out to Stephen Vincent at Disney for that, and also for the song that we just sold, because he was all along. He was very clear that there would be a short edited version for the film because that's what they needed, and then he would have the longer version
Right.
for the for a recording. And that is, that's why ultimately it's one of the reasons why it's so satisfying to work at a place like Disney, other than the final product or final results that are always beautiful and beautifully
Yeah.
produced.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
to have people like Jay Stutler and Steven looking out for you, as a creator, as an
Right.
artist,
Right.
to 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 maintain the integrity of what you've created for them to the best of their ability. As it turns out, in the song that we wrote last week, we ended up speeding up the BPM, and now there's just one recording, and it's the right amount of time. So we didn't have to do two recordings of that one. But
That's good.
if you do go listen to, and I will put it on the link on the to the podcast, which I generally
Awesome.
have done before. But
Cool.
I want to put the link, make sure I put the link to the long version. And if I don't have a link to the long version, for our fan, you should
Well,
definitely.
yeah, that one. It'll be on YouTube. I'm sure you could just put the YouTube
Oh
link
yeah,
to it.
they have that lyric one with the
Yeah.
long one. Yeah.
And
Uh,
you should tell the story of you. I met Kenny at an award ceremony right
Oh
after
yeah, I'd
that,
never met Kenny because
and
that was
he was
unfortunately we were going to go out for the awards, and then Cameron Boyce died, so the whole thing ended up not happening. The premiere
right.
of
Oh,
the movie
right,
itself
exactly.
ended up not happening.
But tell the listener,
Yeah.
Efren Gonzalez, that
And
about
it's
that you
not
met
Brianna Marie, I'll tell you that. It still is not my wife.
that you went to see Dove on Broadway and you met her. And
I
when
did. She was doing a production of Clueless that Amy Heckerling, who created Clueless, was trying to adapt for stage, and they were using source music at the time. There's since been another production of Clueless with a new score in London that I think is doing pretty well. And so Dove was it was at the Signature Theater in New York, and she was Cher. She was wonderful in it. And had I been texting her? I don't know how I got in touch with her. Um,
maybe Stephen Vincent helped you out. I don't know.
it must have been because she's not responsive on social media. So somehow the message
Did
got.
you, did you know someone else in the show? Maybe.
Oh, I knew someone else in the show. That's exactly what it was. That's
Yeah.
exactly. So I was. Thank you, John. So I was communicating through another cast member, and
Yeah.
I didn't really know, if she would care or if she would remember or whatever. And this was before the movie
Yeah. It
the
hadn't
movie
come out
start
yet.
there had been was it before the movie had come out?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So the movie hadn't come out yet. There was a interview that Dove gave after the movie came out that they published where they asked all of the cast members what their favorite song from the Descendants trilogy was, and she said
Right.
ours.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that at the time.
Right.
So I didn't know she was going to come out. I didn't know she was going to recognize me or care or whatever.
Right. Right.
I was there with my then fiance, Brianna, and well, Dove came out. She absolutely knew who I was. She came over. She ran up to me. She gave me a big hug. She said, "Your song changed my life." I don't know what that meant, but I love that that's how she felt. Um, it's a memory I'll always cherish. She
Am I
was just
mistaken? Didn't she sing
delightful.
it? Didn't she start to sing the chorus or something, I
Oh
think?
yeah, I think she did. Yeah, she
Yeah.
was very happy.
It was a great time. I loved it. I was very proud of that, and I'm very proud of this. So yeah, good for us.
So, you and we're going to leave Descendants for now. There are lots of Descendant stories, but we'll leave those for when you're a guest, and Paul will
Okay.
ask you. But I want to just I want to do this is the shameless plugs portion of the podcast. Can you give me a shameless plug jingle just off the top of your head?
Shameless plug.
Shameless plugs.
It's a shameless plug. It's a shameless plug for Dave and John.
See,
Cut
first
that.
draft.
Make sure you cut that out.
No, no, no.
Edit.
That's the first draft. I want you to write the chart up for that. So right
Are we
now,
going to talk about one of my favorite musicals?
let's do it. What is it?
Five Women at an Airport.
Right. So John and I have our musical Five Women in an Airport up now on virtualstagelab.com or on YouTube. You can just go right to YouTube. You can also
Or
go
on
to
johnkavanaugh.net.
Apparently, you can go to johnkavanaugh.net, and you can also go to literally 5womeninanairportmusical.com, where you can find all kinds of extras, behind the scenes, clips, and whatnot. You can link to the actual musical. We're very, very proud of the filming of this show
Yeah.
that really has been a part of our lives for like 20 years, literally, in
Yeah,
some
in
form or
various
another.
versions, right?
Um, and So just real briefly, if you don't know, Five Women in Airports started as well, it's got a long history, but the title was actually Having It Almost at the New York Music Theater Festival, the now defunct much mourned New York Music Theater Festival in 2005, 2006. And then it became Having It All at the
In
NoHo Arts
LA.
Center in 2011, I want to say, and
It was
Laguna
around the Sofia
Playhouse in
time. Yeah,
2013,
yeah.
where it was nominated for 7 Ovation Awards, including Best Musical, Best Book, and 4 of the 5 women. The fifth woman who wasn't nominated in that original production for an Ovation Award was nominated for an NAACP Image Award, which probably gives you an insight into why she wasn't nominated for an Ovation Award in 2011. But I'm going to let that one go. And then we decided during the pandemic there was just too much worthy material to let it just, sink into the ether forever. And so we went back and did a huge overhaul, rethink. We set it um, in the
Pandemic.
middle of the first year of the pandemic, in a very specific moment, right before the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and before vaccines, and before the 2020 election, when we would know what the fate of the women in their country would be, but they would not. And
And I think you should say it's very influenced by the pandemic and everything you just said. But the core of the show has always been the same, and it's about women and their journeys and their lives and their choices. And but what was good about your concept of putting it in this period is that it informed a lot of issues about why these 5 women were speaking to each other, why there weren't other people at the airport, in at least at this gate at that moment. And so it definitely informs everything all throughout the show, but it's not really about that. And the core of the show is still the same, and um, you know, but amped up, I guess. And
well, I mean, I
I
think it
think,
raised the stakes by setting it
yeah,
in that
oh,
moment.
totally, totally,
And it answered a lot of questions that I think had hung over the show's first 20 minutes, which was, why are these women speaking to each other? Why is
right,
there no one else there?
yeah, right,
Why, and what it also did was it meant that if you remember being in there in that time, you would not have been at the airport at all unless
yeah,
you really had some important thing to do
yeah,
or place to
right.
be.
It
So
was like a
suddenly all
brief
5 of those,
window that
yeah,
you
and it
could
was brief.
travel.
Yeah.
Like, I want to talk about VSL, but maybe we talk about that next time because I'm a big, huge fan.
Oh, you got to go.
Well, no, I could keep going for. I
I
just
mean,
didn't know
no,
how
well, we're
long.
kind of there. I mean, I
I
love that we have it. I hope you all go watch it.
The
We're super
cast, you
proud of
guys,
where it. The
the
cast
cast
is
is incredible. And the thing about these, my opinion about their concept of doing these film capture versions of basically a staged reading, uh, it's so magnificent as a songwriter for the theater, um, that you get such an amazing visual of your project. And in some ways, I was telling Dave, it's almost too good because people are going to think that we wanted to make a film. We didn't want to make a film. The women learned the song in the afternoon, and the next morning they came in and staged it and put on some clothes and they filmed it. It's not. It was brilliantly directed by Al Silber. The cast, I won't go through it because just go watch it. But the cast is incredible. It's just, but not every transition was flushed out. There wasn't time. So it's not a film. It's a film of a stage reading, more or less, but it
it's a
looks
film
so
capture, what we're
beautiful.
calling a video demo, basically.
Yeah. And but the cinematographer, uh the lights, the sound, I mean, I can't say enough. I watch it, and it's just beautiful. So
Well, I love that you feel that way, and I, yes, shout out to Al Silver, shout out to our partner Wendy Perlman,
yeah,
who allowed it to happen and helped it happen, and wouldn't without her
right,
would never have
right,
none of it would have happened. Um,
right.
but yeah, it's a tool for writers really to look at their
Yeah,
work and see what they have in a way that doesn't cost what it would have cost if we were going to
right.
do a 20-hour reading. And then, of course, hopefully the idea will be that it will fall under the guise of the gaze, GAZE, of producers, theater makers, licensors, and whatnot. And that's
Yeah.
kind of the idea of the model. But
How many have you has VSL produced so
so
far?
we
Five?
actually are just wrapping our fifth right now.
Five. Yeah.
And the first one has been licensed. Paul's Musical Ribbit, which is on the
Awesome.
Virtual Stage Lab website, was I guess I can announce this, was licensed about a week ago by Uproar Theatricals and is available
Excellent.
for licensing. So,
Excellent.
we're slowly getting there, show by
Awesome.
show. And we will be formally launching. So, watch this space and your social media for all of that. But thank you for the kind words about Virtual Stage
No,
Lab, Johnny.
I think it's a brilliant idea, and I think if anyone watches our show, Five Women at Airport, they could see watch all of them, of course, but they,
Watch
they
them
could
all,
see.
but Five Women in an Airport is obviously very special to me, very special to Johnny. We've been, it's been a part of our lives for 20 years, and not just because, we like beating dead horses, but because there's material in there that was worth preserving. And
Can
and
we can we
it's
talk about the cast? Can we mention
oh
some
my
names?
God, please
The
do.
incredible Brianna Marie.
Oh, Brianna Marie, who's that?
She,
Mrs.
I think
Goldsmith.
I think those headphones you're wearing belong to
They belong to
her.
her. Yeah, they do.
Kate Rockwell, Katie
Unbelievable.
Garrity,
Katie
Caitlin
Garrity.
Fu.
Caitlin
I
Fu.
missed somebody. Uh,
Elena Shadow.
Elena
The
Shadow.
immortal Elena Shadow.
Elena.
Oh,
I should
yes, but how
remember
did you get the
that.
name Elena? Um, no,
No,
and
that's
and
funny.
and it was, and with, oh, and by the way, let's do a little, this is a little plug for Al Silber. Just I don't know if you saw this, but she's readapted the book from the Lerner and Lowe estate of
Well,
Brigadoon.
yeah, I knew that was happening because we
Oh, you
talked
knew that
about
was
it.
anyway. And that's now been announced going into the Pasadena Playhouse. She was our
Oh,
director. She's our friend. But she directed Five Women Airport and did it brilliantly.
brilliant
And
job.
just brilliantly. And the way she was able to bring those five women together and get so much out of them, as you say, on the fly. It wasn't
Right.
it's not a process where, we get to spend 2 weeks in the room, playing zip zap zop, and then, we stage for 2 weeks, and then we have tech for 10 days. No, we did the whole thing in 9 days. She was
Yeah,
ahead of schedule
it's incredible.
by the time we
Incredible.
finished. So uh thank you for mentioning all
Check
of
it
that. But
out.
it's out there. Let's do it. Let's make it
Five
happen.
women musical. No, five women at an airport musical.com.
Five women at an airport musical.com. And that has been Shameless Plugs. Play us out on Shameless Plugs, Johnny.
Shameless plugs. Shameless plugs.
When you come
Okay.
back as a guest of my favorite sings, we will then go into things like, talking about what's on Broadway.
Okay. We
But we
could talk
don't do
about
any
the Tonys.
snark. No
We
snark.
could we could talk about the Tonys
We'll
next
do a
time.
quick Tony breakdown. Let's do it. And then
No,
I know
next
you got to
time.
go.
Yeah, next time.
Just give me your headlines.
I wish the sound had been better.
Right?
I had a very difficult time understanding new lyrics that I didn't
Yes.
already know. Um, and I know it's tough because you do you mix for the room? Do you mix for the television audience? What do you
Oh,
mix it for? But I missed a lot of the lyrics in
I did too. So I'm glad
the
to hear it
opening
wasn't just me
one.
because I know I'm losing my hearing. But that's yes.
A friend of ours who shall remain nameless, Barbara, said she put on some.
Sorry, Barbara.
I'm not gonna have any friends after this.
I know that's the downfall. That's the downside.
No, yes, you have
What
to
did
put.
Barbara say?
She had to put captions on. She couldn't understand.
Oh, was that helpful though?
I don't know. I don't
I
know.
those captions are very shady when they're just like, unless someone has gone in there and actually,
Mama's gotta let go.
yeah.
No.
exactly what's happening. I generally enjoyed
Okay.
it, and I was generally happy. I don't know if you got to see my maybe happy ending. It is wonderful. You will love it. So I was happy
Okay.
that it won all those awards.
Cool.
I was
Cool.
generally happy with how that mostly turned out.
Cool. Well, we have to come up and see everything. So
You have to come and see everything. Come on out and see me and Brie. Although now she's in San Diego.
I could go down and see her. She's
You're
only
gonna go
two
down to
hours.
San Diego and see
Yeah, maybe we'll go see it.
Noises Off at the Old Globe. So if you're in the sound of my voice, go get your tickets. Jefferson Mays and Brianna Marie and Noises Off at the Old Globe.
At the old Globe. Okay,
Johnny,
Davey, thanks for
it's been a
having me, brother.
pleasure. You're
Thank you.
amazing.
I'm your biggest fan. You know that.
Oh my God, I'm yours. And I know you don't like to, verbalize your emotions, but I'm going to just say it. I love you, man. I love
I
you,
love
Johnny.
I love you. I've known you, like you say, 40 years. It's been, a long ride. So,
A
and we
long
still
ride.
speak. We
Ups
still
and
speak.
downs, but here we are doing a fucking podcast together. So
There
that's
you
something.
go. Okay, my love to Paul. Bye.
My love to F,
Okay.
and we'll talk soon. And
Yes, we will.
congratulations on that song you sold
Thank
last
you.
week.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Here you are alone, and you deserve it. Your friends have turned to stone, and that's on you. You had a cause to serve, but did you serve it? Or did you see yourself in a way that wasn't true? This is not your father's fairy tale, and no, it's not your mother's fault you failed. So when your story comes to light, make sure the story that they write goes, once upon a time, a girl tried harder. Once upon a time, she tried again. Once upon a braver choice, she took a risk, she used her voice, and that will be my once upon a time, this time. Why tell all those lies? You feel unworthy, like there isn't solid ground for you to stand. But a stack of lies is not a firm foundation. You cannot build a castle on a mountain made of sand. This is not your mother's dark desire. It's not your father's hair on fire. Turns out it's you who's not awake. So if there's change you wanna make, take. Once upon a time, she fought a dragon. Once upon a time,
My Favorite Sings with David Goldsmith and Paul Gordon is a production of Virtual Stage Lab. Virtual Stage Lab was founded to create film captures of original musicals and plays to democratize how theater gets developed, seen, produced, and licensed for production. If you have a favorite sing from a musical that you'd like to have David and Paul discuss, break down, and analyze, please contact our Director of Marketing, Melody Munitz, at virtualstagelab@gmail.com. For more information and our catalog of original projects by Paul Gordon and David Goldsmith and others, go to www.virtualstagelab.com. Main title parody lyrics written and performed by David Goldsmith. End title music by Paul Gordon from the Gordon and Goldsmith musical My Improbable Sisters, starring Jenna Lee Rosen and Tony Award nominee Jasmine Amy Rogers, now available to stream for free on the Virtual Stage Lab page on YouTube. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please like, comment, and share on social media. Thank you for listening. Welcome to the community. This has been My Favorite Sings, a practically perfect, not at all corny title. Title under protest by Paul Gordon.